So I was actually able to do some digging around, and I found the actual PDF from it was posted online, and so this is the actual PDF of the letter that Archbishop Vigano wrote to President Donald Trump, and there's his signature there. So that's the best I could find in terms of documentation. I looked to see if there's any live video, but obviously it's a letter, so he's not going to be recording himself writing a letter. But I do have proof that President Trump acknowledges that a letter was written, and that's right here coming up. So Archbishop Vigano, I wanted to find out about his character. I found this interview that he was in, and found out that he was actually a whistleblower. The Vatican doesn't like him very much. The Vatican and the media are accusing him of knowing that there was a known pedophile in the Vatican and being promoted, and he wasn't saying anything. So the media is blaming him and blaming a guy that's in the grave. But here's the interview, and you judge for yourself about the character of this man. I would highly recommend you watch the entire interview, and you can find that interview. Also, listen closely what the Archbishop has to say about the Vatican, and the fact that the accused, the pedophile, actually went to Switzerland and corrupted a whole generation of priests. I highly recommend you do go back and watch the interview.
The Vatican's McCarrick report, 2 years in the making, finally landed on Tuesday. The nearly 500-page internal investigation explores how the former cardinal was able to achieve such an elevated position in the church, despite years of rumors of sexual misconduct. The report seems to lay blame on individuals no longer living, including Pope John Paul II. It also points a finger at Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, the former apostolic nuncio to the United States, and the whistleblower who brought much of McCarrick's misdeeds to light in his series of testimonials. To respond to the report, we are joined by Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who joins us via phone. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. The report claims you did not come forward, that's the quote, to present evidence for this Vatican inquiry. Were you asked to provide information for this McCarrick report? Did anyone reach out to you?
I am surprised to discover that a report in which I am mentioned 306 times accuses me of not having presented myself to testify in this Vatican inquiry on Theodore McCarrick. But according to the norm of the canon law, the calling of witnesses is the responsibility of the one who is in charge of the process.
So, Archbishop, they never reached out to you then to ask you to contribute to the report or to interview you?
Yes, it is completely incomprehensible and anomalous that it was not considered opportune to call upon me to testify. But even more disturbing that this deliberate omission was then used against me.
Interesting.
From the public statements of James Green, it is clear that the beginning of McCarrick's climb, he was then a young, newly ordained priest, coincided with that visit to Switzerland, to a monastery that was later the site of the meeting of the conspirator of the so-called St. Galla Mafia, himself.
Your Excellency, the Pope, according to the report, maintains that you did not inform him of McCarrick's activities or restrictions on McCarrick in June of 2013. The Pope was certain that, quote, you as nuncio never told him that McCarrick had committed crimes against any person, whether adult or minor, or described McCarrick as a serial predator. Your response?
Yes, this statement is absolutely false. First of all, it was Bergoglio himself on June 23, 2013, who explicitly asked me my opinion of McCarrick. as I testify in my 2018 memoir. Quote, I answer him with complete frankness. Holy Father, I don't know if you know Cardinal McKay, but if you ask the Congregation for Bishops, there is a dossier this thick about him. He corrupted a generation of seminarians and priests, and Pope Benedict ordered him to withdraw to a life of prayer and penance. The Pope did not make the slightest comment about those very grave words of mine, did not show any expression of surprise on his face, as if he had already known the matter for some time, and immediately he changed the subject. But then, what was the Pope's purpose in asking me that question? What is Cardinal McCarrick like? He clearly wanted to find out if I was an ally of McCarrick or not.
So what we see is that the nuns claim that Archbishop Vigano wrote a letter to President Donald Trump claiming that there was a global conspiracy. Actually, he did write that letter, so although the media didn't spend much time covering it or debunked it, we've shown that actually he did write that letter. And we've shown you that President Trump acknowledged that he did receive that letter. But what's interesting is the fact that the Archbishop is claiming that there's a massive amount of corruption in the Catholic Church, and that there is in fact something called the Deep Church that is working in cahoots with deep governments around the world. And it's also interesting to note that he doesn't refer to Pope Francis, but he refers to him as his normal name. And he also it sounds like he doesn't acknowledge that he's a legitimate pope. Once again, I encourage all of you to watch the original interview and listen carefully to what Archbishop Vigano has to say. And what about the World Economic Forum? They talked about the World Economic Forum talking about a global reset. Is that really true? Is the global economic forum, are the people that meet at Davos really talking about a global reset? Okay, so what about the World Economic Forum? What's that all about? Well, that's where they meet in Davos, Switzerland. The powerful men and women get together, men of industry, all kinds of businesses. 300 different businesses, I think, are represented there. And what they do is powerful men and women meet to decide what the rest of the world is going to live like. So they take it upon themselves to make decisions for us. And again, these are powerful men that I guess they're considered, they know what's best for the rest of us because they, after all, have money. And by the way, Justin Trudeau was there, and he was speaking about a great reset. So the boys were right. The nun was right about the Archbishop, and the boys were right about Justin Trudeau. And by the way, if you were thinking about joining their little party and crashing it, you can forget about that because it's heavily guarded. Of course, if you were part of a group that was planning on turning the world into an electronic dystopia, you would probably want to have the place guarded too. Okay, the brainchild behind the World Economic Forum is a fellow by the name of Klaus Schwab, and they are now celebrating 50 years. It was called something before, but he's tickled pink. He wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and we'll give you a peek of what he thinks the world will be like. He basically says it will affect every essence of human existence. So I want you to hear in his own words basically what he is saying. Then I'm going to show you a few other quotes and probably end this video with a guy that's actually looked into this quite a bit, that's going to explain what the world will look like when we're done. But I've got a few videos, so hang in there. I want you to take a look at, and some of these videos will be coming right directly from the World Economic Forum, so you can hear with your own ears what they're talking about. So we're going to continue on with that. So what we have coming up here is Mr. Klaus Schwab's telling us that in essence we'll be cyborgs and our futures will be controlled digitally.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
And firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the moderator. I'm Hiromi Ozaki. I'm an artist, also young global leader from Japan. Session. You know, I always want to be a cyborg. I'm waiting for the day to become one. But like today, we like to really talk about the recent developments of brain-computer interface and how that's really blurring the line between man and machine.
Another technology that colleagues of mine have been using in Oxford is deep brain stimulation. I'll give an example of how that's being used. So this is a neural implant that's implanted deep into the brain. So you get an implant and it's attached to a pacemaker device that is just under the skin. And it sends an electric current to the implant and in that way regulates the area of the brain. Being able to sort of increasingly adopt a lifestyle where we are continually hooked up to a computer or a machine that helps enhance our capabilities, particularly our intellectual capabilities. So we think about being wired into the internet, getting our brains to upload information. But this represents actually the technology problem, where the read of the brain and the input into the brain all happens within the brain in an implant that then is actually a very small implant that's put just underneath the skull. So it doesn't... and then I just wanted to talk... I won't be able to say much about this today, but this is a project that I'm really excited about. It's a partnership that we're developing with Airbus to think about collective swarm intelligence. The interesting things about this technology is that it's an emergent intelligence. So it arguably is not a fully autonomous intelligent system. So if you think about this technology one day being 1 million tiny insect-type drones that we release for surveillance, you know, whether it's military surveillance or crop surveillance, what have you. So this is really where I think some of the most interesting areas of this technology is sort of 1 million brains beyond us doing their own thing, advance human capacities in ways that will also protect soldiers, but enable us to do much more than we can already. And so we've been talking to military officers around the world. We're in the third wave of data collection, so we don't have any concrete findings to share at the moment. But we've been talking to them about their neural implants, a retinal implant that enhanced their sight capabilities, or a cochlear implant that allowed them to hear, you know, across great distances. But they want to know things like, you know, do I own my implant? Does my implant become part of me? What happens when I leave the military? Who pays for my implant? Does it get removed? Do I get to keep it for life? Does it get upgraded? Who pays for that?
And the problem with our tools, when we create a tool, we use that tool to control the world. But actually, we end up being controlled by our tools as well. So the problem with these tools and understanding the brain like that is that actually that can be used reversely in terms of like hacking the human brain in order to achieve certain states or certain proclivities and so on.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Okay, so those are some of the wonderful people at Davos planning what our future dystopian is going to look like. But what about the World Economic Forum and talk of a great reset? Are they behind that? And the answer is yes, as you'll see. It's actually part of Klaus Schwab's idea of the fourth revolution.
That's why last spring, Canada worked with Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Secretary General Antonio Guterres to convene a high-level meeting to discuss how leaders around the world could work together to close these gaps and build a better, more equitable system that works for everyone. The most promising ideas will be taken up within existing IMF and World Bank processes, as well as at the G7 and G20 leaders summits later in the fall. Because we understand that right now we have to fix urgent problems, but in the long run, we also have to fix the system so that it works for everyone. To eliminate this virus anywhere, we need to eliminate it everywhere. While scientists work around the clock to develop a vaccine, as governments, we have the responsibility to ensure it'll be distributed quickly and fairly around the world. This is an important initiative, and I encourage other governments to join in as well. We need to work together, and not just on vaccines. Canada believes that a strong, coordinated response across the world and across sectors is essential. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
So here we see people in Regina protesting against the Great Reset. Now, it's easy to just call them tin hat conspiracy theorists, but I've already shown you that this is exactly what powerful men are planning to do. These people are not crazy people. They're not tin hat conspiracy theorists. These people understand that there's a real threat to the loss of our freedom. So don't make fun of them. Maybe wake up and join them.
Standing up for fucking freedom. Freaking 3 kids. No excuses, guys. No fucking excuses. 4-hour drive, 3 kids. Fuck it. Freedom matters more.
Having said that, let's move on to another big global issue, which is the Great Reset. As As I said, this has been quite topical of late. There's a lot of different theories swirling around. Some of them are verging on conspiratorial, but it's important to address it because it is real. It's not actually, the existence of it is not a conspiracy. Time magazine is running a Great Reset issue. The World Economic Forum is calling its next national annual meeting the Great Reset, and they've put out a paper called The Great Reset. It's very, very real. It's an actual thing, and it has meaning for all of us because it's got great influence at the area of global governance with world leaders and so on. But to understand the Great Reset, you first need to have some understanding of the World Economic Forum, or the WEF. This is a body. It's just an organization, a not-for-profit. It's based in Geneva in Switzerland. It was founded by a bloke called Klaus Schwab in 1971, and basically, in a nutshell, it is a think tank. It's a think tank kind of on steroids, though. A think tank is kind of an organization that produces research, and they put together research papers on areas that are relevant to government policy. So it might be research on tax rates and the impact it has on business, or it could be on, I don't know, the nature, how many trees are in a suburb and what that does to happiness of the community or whatever. It could be any number of things. And they could put this research paper together, do all this original work, prove the whole bunch of things like a 20% tax rate is ideal, or 7 trees per square meter is ideal, or whatever. There'd be a lot of trees, but, all that kind of stuff. And they go to government and say, here's our recommendations, here's our research. Some of these think tanks are quite influential, and they can really influence government policy through the work that they do. The World Economic Forum is a bit like that, except that it's kind of enormous. It is global, for one thing, and also it's managed to get real influence with a lot of global figures, mostly world leaders, but also global business leaders, also figures like Prince Charles, Greta Thunberg, all these types, and a lot of celebrity types and everything as well. So it's quite a broad church, so to speak, and it brings all these people together at what they call these annual meetings. That brings me to the Great Reset. What exactly is it? Well, it's actually a project of the World Economic Forum. It is the title, as I said, of their next annual meeting in May 2021. It is also produced in a big document. It's full of many words that make, that are boring reading, and a lot of them are buzzwords and generalized and all the rest of it. And it's just frankly excruciating. But some of the buzzwords it includes are things like change and transformation. It's always on about change and transformation. It wants to really change things. It wants to see that change and transformation in every country and every industry. So it's quite radical. And it wants to see that change and transformation shaped and brought on by the recovery from COVID-19 to reimagine economic systems and reimagine capitalism, as we shall see in just a moment. Importantly, this is not just a document that is, or even a body, the World Economic Forum, that's all about governments. It's also all about the biggest businesses as well. It brings them into the agenda. And it does that by saying, businesses aren't just about business. Businesses are actually all about, making a better world. And businesses are all about politics. And businesses are all about leaving legacies and changing society. The World Economic Forum is inviting businesses into the fold and saying, this is business and government, and we're all into this thing of making a better world. That's significant because we're about to see the World Economic Forum supports stuff that traditionally businesses would not embrace, but they've cleverly included business in the agenda. So that's very clever on their part. Now, all of that's very general. But there are times when people like Mr. Schwab himself, Klaus Schwab, are a lot clearer about their meaning, and they really distill what they want, and you can get a sense of what they really mean with a bit more clarity and a bit fewer words. One example is October the 22nd, Time magazine, an article by Klaus Schwab himself summarizing a lot of his work and much of what the Great Reset stands for. And I'm going to just read some quotes and make comment. He says this, for example, he says, a better economy is possible, but we need to reimagine capitalism to do it. What he really means is pitch out capitalism and put something in its place, but reimagine is a little bit more acceptable and genteel in the diplomatic world. He goes on to say the same economic system that created so much prosperity in the golden age of American capitalism in the 1950s and 1960s is now creating inequality and climate change. So in other words, capitalism is no longer any good. It was great, but no longer any good. And he says, and the same political system, so not economic system, but now political system that enabled our global progress and democracy after World War II now contributes to societal discord and discontent. Each was well-intended, but had unintended negative consequences. So short version, capitalism's bad now, democracy's bad now. Both of them are broken, both of them need resetting, both of them need fixing. You can get a sense of where this is going. He says crazy things like evidence that democracy is now splintered and messed up is things like Black Lives Matter and the climate justice movement, which is insane because these things have not been birthed from belief in democracy or any of the ideals of democracy. These things have been set up as an antithesis to democracy. They're revolutionary movements that don't believe in democracy or don't believe in Western values or any of these things at all. Capitalism's got to change, democracy's got to change. He goes on, there are reasons to believe a better economic system is possible and that it could be just around the corner. He goes on to say 2 reasons for that. COVID-19, here's a great reset opportunity. Here's a new economic system we can bring in. Now's the chance, since we've botched our economies effectively, and maybe we can do something different now to hide that. The other thing he actually uses a lot, and that the World Economic Forum uses a lot, is climate change. Climate change as another sort of crisis, so to speak, to precipitate a massive reinvention of these systems. He goes on, for the past 30 to 50 years, the neoliberalist ideology has increasingly prevailed in large parts of the world. This approach centres on the notion that the market knows best, that the business of business is business, and that the government should refrain from setting clear rules for the functioning of markets. Those dogmatic beliefs have proved wrong, but fortunately we are not destined to follow them. Yeah, really? Okay. I would say that a lot of the debt trouble that Western countries are in right now isn't because of markets, but it's because of government interventions, like coronavirus. Seriously. But anyway, notice how he's saying that businesses, he's bringing them into the political realm. The business of business is no longer business, but something far greater. Join us, be part of this program. That's really significant. And here's the other thing. He says these things have been proved wrong. The reality is that the last, since World War II, if you look at the democratic and the capitalistic systems of the world and how that's spread into more and more countries, the reality is that it has lifted more people out of poverty than at any other time in history. It has elevated more into the middle class than at any other time in history. It has raised up the lives of more people. It has improved the lot of more people than any other move or idea in all of history. And actually, when you do that, you get all the other things that Mr. Klaus says that he wants. You get, for example, far less emissions per capita with the technological advancement and with the change from a country from third world to developing to first world. You get all sorts of benefits. And he says, no, we don't want those benefits through the capitalistic tradition. We've got a better idea. That's important to note. Here's something far more telling. A video was released by the World Economic Forum, since deleted, interestingly, based on the notion of imagining life in 2030. It's a short video with a number of taglines. The first tagline that appears on the screen, and indeed the thumbnail of the video, was, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." Now here's a question. Who exactly is you? Who's owning nothing? I'll tell you this, it isn't Klaus. I'll tell you this, it's not the World Economic Forum. I'll tell you this, it's not the big businesses and big governments that are involved in the World Economic Forum. Oh no, but it's you. It's the little guy. You own nothing because someone is going to own something. That is pure communism, with an elite ruling class that oversees all things, and the little guy owns nothing and is meant to be happy. Doesn't work that way in practice. Great idea. The next line is, whatever you want, you will rent. And it makes my point. Who are you renting it from? Who are you paying? I thought we all own nothing. Someone owns the things. Someone made the things. Someone replaces the things. Someone is responsible for the things. It's just not you. It continues. The US won't be the world's leading superpower. In other words, and it goes on to say, it will be a coalition of nations. So it will be a multinational government. That's what will dominate. Right. As if that could possibly go wrong. And again, if America's not the superpower, I mean, what, do we want China to be the superpower? Do we think that'll go well? I mean, this is sort of the world government stuff. It's idealism. It says you'll eat much less meat, an occasional treat, not a staple. So in other words, someone is now telling me what I can eat. Someone's now telling people what kind of meat they can grow and how they can distribute it, and they're controlling food production, supply, and what you put into your mouth. Surprise. I guess if you don't own anything and you're dependent on the government who owns everything to rent stuff from, why not let them define what your diet is? It goes on. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. We'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Okay, the first part of that statement, false. 1 billion people will not be displaced by climate change. But even if climate change was happening of that nature, there's plenty of work been done to show that the best way to deal with it is technological advance and actually have the technology to deal with it. People can live anywhere with the right technology. People can handle anything with the right technology. And it's technological advance that will do it. But no, they say instead we're going to have to welcome and integrate refugees. And what this is based on effectively, and frankly a lot of countries do a great job welcoming and integrating refugees. They just do it in a sustainable way. But of course this is based on the idea that all cultures are a relativistic view of culture. That there's no culture that's better than another. There's no values that are better than others. You know, no country has gotten further ahead because of its values and its culture, which are good. And therefore, to dilute that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.